It's that time of the month again. You know the drill. The bloating, the mood swings. And don't even get me started on the pain. Or how uncomfortable it is to just sit down. Every month, the body throws a pity party, waging war against itself. And whilst this process can be seamless for a lot of women, for others, it could mean hanging between life and death. For the longest time, menstrual periods were a taboo subject, something to be discussed only amongst women, certainly not on social media. Pads were to be hidden away, tucked in between your notebooks, wrapped in secrecy. And it took me a long while to realize that it really was just a natural thing, nothing dirty about it. And keeping important issues like this under wraps, it only adds to the suffering that many women have to endure. So this may not be the video for you if you're squirmish about periods, but I promise if you stick around, you'll learn a thing or two. Endometriosis. This is a topic that I haven't spoken about for about 2 years or so now, but I was listening to I Said What I Said, and they recently had somebody who suffered infertility from endometriosis, and I was like, yeah, I need to talk about this. I have a blog post about it, but since I am not actively promoting my blog anymore, I figured why not do a video, talk about this, talk about your experience, educate people, inform people, make people aware of this chronic condition. So yes, endometriosis. I feel like now more people would probably know about this, but if you don't know about this, it's fine. If you've never heard about it, it is fine. The first time I heard about endometriosis, the first time I ever saw that word was in medical school. During my obs and gynae posting, we had a lecture that was fibroid, adenomyosis, and endometriosis, right? That was the topic for the day in class. But our lecturer dwelt mostly on fibroids because, fibroid is the common one, is the one they see more often. And endometriosis was just one condition that they mentioned in class. We should know the definition for exam. It wasn't something I really went to look for or saw anybody that had ever suffered from that. And then the second time that I heard endometriosis was when I was fresh off surgery. Anesthesia had worn off and my doctors came to see me. I came around and they were all looking so solemn, and I was like, okay, what is happening? And they were like, oh, we think you have endometriosis. And my life kind of changed since then. So let's back it up a bit. During my housemanship, I suddenly started having way more pain than I used to. My periods were usually very heavy, very painful. But I noticed this was the end of 2017. It was like October, thereabouts. And I was having my last posting for my medical housemanship. I noticed that I was having way more pain than normal. And not just that, it was like at a particular spot, it was just consistent pain that just kept on going and coming. But working in the hospital, it was a lot, right? Because I remember then they had just posted me to the neonatal unit. And it was a weekend, and I spoke to the senior reg, and I was like, oh, I'm having this really terrible pain. And she was like, well, I'm a woman, to come and start your post. I would never forget that because of that thing. And so I was just like, okay, we move, painkiller. But it was happening so frequently that I was like, I just gotta have a scan. You're working in the hospital, you live in the hospital, in a teaching hospital for that matter. Why haven't you done a scan? Doctors are the worst. And so I went to the hospital, to the radiologist to do a pelvic scan. And then they called, the person that did my scan was like, come back again, let's do this again. I'm not so sure what I'm seeing. And then I went back the other day, and after doing it, she was like, this is interesting. I'm not sure. This is unusual. I don't know what this is. I'll come back again. Let's track it. Let's keep track of it. And I went back again, and the size had increased. Or they were like, oh, you have an ovarian cyst. We've seen that you have an ovarian cyst. But ovarian cysts are normal in women, right? But if it's one that is increasing in size, causing pain, then you need to go and check. There may be a problem. And so every time I would go back to do this, I think I did the scan about 3 times. Every time I would go back to do the scan, it would have increased in size. And it got to a point where they were like, you know what, you have to go to the gynecologist and you need to take out this cyst. It is getting dangerous. The problem with cysts basically is a collection of fluid. It's like it forms like a sac. So it's like a collection of fluids. And I had it on my ovary. And so I went to the hospital. These were doctors that trained me. These were doctors that I worked with. So it was kind of helpful a bit more. I got to see like the consultant, etc. And they were like, no, yeah, we need to take out this cyst. And so surgery. All my life, I've never had a surgery before. All my life, I've never thought that I would have a surgery. And then it was surgery. Okay, we need to take this out because, it could torsion. Torsion is when something twists over itself and then blood wouldn't flow properly to the organ, and it's another big thing. And so we went in and we took out the cyst. I went in thinking, okay, they are taking out this cyst, life continues. Till the doctors walked up to my bed after the surgery looking all solemn, and they told me, you have endometriosis. Yeah. Feels like a long time ago. And this diagnosis kind of upended my world. Suddenly, I became this person who has a prospect of infertility. All of my life, I've never thought, I would get married and I won't be able to have kids. But that is just one of the things that comes with endometriosis. It's actually the most common one that comes with endometriosis. So now, what is endometriosis? Endometriosis is a condition where the tissues that line the uterus, the woman's uterus, is found elsewhere aside from the uterus. It can be found in the lungs, the ovaries, the rectum, other places. The uterus is basically your womb. Not your womb, the woman's womb. This is where the baby grows. And it is this lining of the uterus, that is what is shed as blood when you have your menstrual flow, right? So what happens is that these tissues are meant to be found only within your womb, which is your uterus. But in endometriosis, you find these tissues in other parts of the bodies where they're not meant to be. So like the ovaries, because these tissues are responsive to hormones, right? Every month when you bleed, there's also bleeding in these different places where the tissues are, right? And it can lead to bleeding. You bleed there, it can form a cyst, like in my case, an ovarian cyst, collection of blood, endometrioma. The constant inflammation every time you have your period, it could cause adhesions where like organs then join together in weird ways that they are not supposed to. It could also lead to scar tissue. When you have an injury and after a while, there's this scar tissue that forms there. And these are all abnormal things. It isn't meant to be like this. Unfortunately, there isn't an actual cause. They don't know what causes it. They have brought about different theories and said, this could be why, but there is no definitive cause. It isn't anything that we did or did not do. It is just one of those things that happen. Life is weird. It is said that 1 in 10 women of reproductive age will suffer from endometriosis. But unfortunately, diagnosis is still made really late. This is because of lack of awareness and normalization of the symptoms. The most common symptom for endometriosis is pain during your menstrual period. And this is something that everybody would say, it's normal. Everybody has pain during their period. It's not a big deal. And so people hardly realize that they have a problem till, way years later. Probably they come with, infertility when they're married. And, during all of the testing, they realize that, this is endometriosis. Or they can be like me, who started having this pain, went in for a scan and realized that she had an ovarian cyst. And, this surgery, they realized that she had endometriosis. So with endometriosis, it's majorly pain during your periods, pain during sex or after sex as well. It's also infertility, fatigue, you're just tired all of the time, heavy bleeding during your periods, you're bleeding, your flow is really heavy. And how I said that the problem is that these tissues that are supposed to be in your uterus, they're in other places. And so it can get really severe. Some people have these tissues in their lungs. So every month when they bleed, when they have their period, these tissues in the lung, it also breaks down and it can cause bleeding. They cough up blood. It can cause inflammation, adhesions. Some people won't have collapse of their lungs. These are like complications. So it isn't something that you just be like, a little pain here and there and we'll be good. It is it is really a big deal. It affects the standard of your life. And so when I got diagnosed with this thing, it was like, okay, now this is I'm entering a new phase of my life. I have to now consider the fact that infertility is on the plate. And aside from that, it was like, oh, you may have more surgeries down the road. So I had one surgery, and a few months later, they were like, okay, you need to have another surgery. And I was just like, wow, is this what my life is going to be like? Surgeries upon surgeries. And here's the thing with endometriosis, it is not one of those conditions that you treat and that is it. It's over. It's a chronic condition, meaning it's something that you live with, practically live with it. And it means that you may require surgery upon surgery upon surgery. So after my first surgery, I was like, okay, cool, we're out of the clear for a bit. And then I had to go back to have another surgery. So now I've had 2 surgeries, both because I had a cyst on my ovary. So what happens with endometriosis is that your problem is that there's a cyst, right? They take out that cyst and then they give you hormones to suppress your period, especially if you're not married and you're not planning to have kids immediately. And then when you want to have kids, they then take you off that and hope that you get pregnant soon enough so that you don't bleed, you don't have a menstrual cycle. If you don't have a menstrual cycle, those tissues don't react or bleed or whatever, and you are kind of stable for that time being. And so obviously I wasn't ready to get married. I didn't even have any boyfriend or anything. So I remember every time I would go to the hospital, the doctor would be like, okay, so when are you getting married? And I'm like, guy, chill, right? Let's deal with this first problem first, and they would always ask you that because they also know that pregnancy helps a bit, like I just explained. It's an expensive condition, and then afterwards, then they placed me on hormone therapy. I would go and have these injections in my stomach every other month. It's called Zoladex. So basically what they did was stop my periods. If I don't have any periods, I'm kind of fine, everything is just quiet. And I did that thankfully I had health insurance, because one shot was like 50K or thereabout. Back then, I shudder to think of what the price would be right now. And so I was just going back, forth, taking my shots, but I would also have a lot of pain either ways, even with that. And I remember that it was just such a confusing and terrible time for me. There's obviously, okay, you need to get married. You already have this thing that you already have adhesions. There are stages of this thing, and I already had adhesions. So I actually went in. My first surgery, they opened me up. The second one, I was going to do a laparoscopy. A laparoscopy is when they just pass a tube in, do what they have to do, come out, right? But when I woke up from this surgery, they told me they had to cut me open because I had a lot of adhesions, like I talked about, adhesions where like your organs are joined together, so they didn't really have access and they had to convert it into an open surgery. So this is me, with my adhesions, facing possible infertility, pain every other day, going to the hospital every other month, trying to just keep everything quiet. It was a tough time for me, to be very honest, but I would always pray about it. Honestly, it's been a few years now. I think 2 years plus that I haven't, I don't even feel like someone that has endometriosis anymore, but we'll get to that. I remember one time I had a particular, I was in so much pain. I had this feeling of heaviness, and I went to this hospital in Surgeries where I stay in my hometown in Lagos. And I went to this hospital and the doctor was like, we need to do a D&C for you. D&C is one of those things they use for abortions back then. And I'm like, I know I'm not practicing medicine, but I don't think people still do D&Cs. Either ways, I'm not going to do it. And I just did not go back. And I remember that the doctor was like, you'll regret this, bro. You're going to regret this decision if you don't do it now. But I mean, hey, look at me now. At some point, everything just kind of stopped. And this is why I would say that God healed me, because I was praying about this thing for a long time. Even currently, my period used to be so heavy that going to school, going out was such a stressful time for me. More often than not, I would get stained. It was terrible. But in the past 1 year plus now. My period has been so light. In fact, I haven't taken any hormonal shots for 2 years. Like, I am clean. I'm just living on vibes, you know. I haven't taken any of those shots in a while. So I've not been doing anything, but I would also go back to go, like whenever I do scans, I'll say, oh, how are my ovaries? And everyone, they're like, it's fine. And my worry back then was that I would have another ovarian cyst, you know, because like I said, this is not something that you just treat and take the surgery, take it off and keep moving on. As long as you're bleeding, as long as you have a cycle, there is a possibility that you would have another ovarian cyst. And so it was one thing I was really scared of. Every time I do a scan, it was like, oh, I hope no cyst, because they already told me that, see, you can't even have another surgery. You already have a lot of adhesion. So having another surgery is not going to be good for you. Strongly do not advise, 0/10. And so I was really scared that I would need another surgery. And it was something that I always prayed about. My friends always prayed about it for me as well. And I kid you not, I'm on my period right now and I am chatty. Look, this is me. And it has been like this I still have pain, but it's not as bad as it used to be. But I'm just saying that for someone who has lived for the past 2 years without taking any hormonal shots, I haven't gone back to the hospital for any Zoladex. I'm not on birth control. For someone who hasn't had any of these things, who isn't actively managing endometriosis for the past 2 years, I have no more symptoms. I go to do my scans, no ovarian cysts. My bleeding has reduced significantly, even way more than it has. It is way less than it has ever been. The pain has reduced significantly. And so most of the time I'm just like, God has healed me, or God has healed me. And that's it. I'm claiming it. That is my story. God has healed me. There's also like the emotional and mental part of it. It's not something that a lot of people are aware of. So where do you want to start explaining it from? It's not something that is physical. It's not like, oh, you see that somebody has fever, their body is hot, they're shaking, this person is something's wrong with this person. It's something that you get in so much pain every other day. And so they call it a hidden disease, right? Because people find it hard to empathize with you when they don't see you, they're not really seeing the effect of whatever is wrong with you physically. And I'm someone that is very, even when I'm in pain, I try to mask it. I would say that my threshold to pain is a bit high. And even when I'm in pain, I could be sitting chatting with someone and I'm actually in pain, I'm not one of those people that oh my God, everywhere I'm just shaking up and down. So it's a bad thing. I wish I was like that because it would help my life. When I tell someone that, something's actually wrong with me, and they're like, there's something wrong with you like this. There was a point in time where I was always just so tired. Like, I remember that was during my NYSC. I remember this because I was the only doctor in this clinic in some local government in Surgeries thereabout, and there was this primary healthcare center. I remember I'll just go to work. I've not done anything. I didn't used to see a lot of patients back then, right? Because it was a very small clinic. I'm just sitting on my chair. And I'm feeling so exhausted and tired. And how do I want to start explaining that? Oh, I'm exhausted. Okay, are you cultivating yam in the forest or something? Why are you tired? You're not doing anything. But you see, all of this, it was just like, man, you can't even understand. So it was like I was going through this thing, but there was no way to make people really understand how bad it was for me. There wasn't like any support group or anything, but I guess there will be support groups now. I just didn't know of any. Oh yeah, I had a colleague at work that also had this. When I talked to them, and it's like, oh yeah, you can actually exchange stories, and I would feel seen and heard. These were things that weren't easy for me to cope with. Obviously the fertility issue as well, but it wasn't something that I wanted to think about often. I'm a very we move. I'm that kind of person, like we move, I remember the time what year was this? I think it was 2019, and I was going to Cape Verde with a friend. This was December, like 27th. And the day before, I was in so much pain. My pelvic area felt so heavy. And I was like, yeah, no, I've paid. My flight is tomorrow. There's no way I'm not going for this trip. Oh, you lie. I remember that day. It was Christmas period, so people places were not so open. I went to Ojeleba, I did scan. I didn't even see the scan result. I just said, me, I'm traveling. I shall travel. I was just praying, God, please, nothing should happen to me here. This Cape Verde that I'm going to. The particular place that we went to, I think it was only one hospital, and it was only one very remote area. Back then, I would be walking, me and my friend would be walking, like when we were at Cape Verde, we would be taking a walk because it was a small, would I call it city? It was quite small, so you could walk around. There were cabs, but most places are walkable. And I would walk and I would be like, let's stop, please. My pelvic area, it feels really, really bad. Somehow, I made it out. Life is very interesting. You can just be living your best life, baby girl, and then they will just come and give you one diagnosis, and then, well, you're living your best life still, but with this coma. And for me, that whole stretch of time, my first surgery, my second surgery, I was living in fear because I knew that this thing could come up again. Like I could have another cyst and then I would have to do another surgery. But they've already told me that they cannot do surgery for me again. That's not advisable. So now what will happen if that happens, right? Also, it was expensive. Those surgeries were not cheap. My meds were not cheap. If I didn't have health insurance back then that I was paying for, I don't even know how I would have coped. When I look back now, I don't even know. Sometimes I was like, I wish I found out that I had this thing earlier, but that one is nobody's fault. Like I said, diagnosis is not something that is made easily. It's not like when you say you have malaria or something that they will say, oh, go and take your blood sample, go and check for this. For endometriosis, it doesn't work that way. The surest way to diagnose it is when they actually go in. So either they open you up or they use like the laparoscopic one where they just pass something and look around and look for the signs of endometriosis, right? It's not something that they'll just say, oh, of course, there's the symptoms that you would have that would make the doctor suspect that, oh, it could be this thing that we're dealing with. But to actually confirm it, they have to go in. So it's not something that I would say, oh, had I known, I would have gone to the hospital early. I would just say, oh, I have heavy periods, I have pain during period, it's normal, that's what everybody goes through. Apparently, I just found out recently that some of you have like 3 days period and it's very light, and I'm just like, wow, how does it feel to be God's favorite? Because your girl had 5 long harrowing days, but not me anymore though. Like things have really improved over here. I'm living med-free. I wanted to say drug-free. That's the thing with languages in different countries, right? I can go to like the pharmacist or I'll be talking to somebody, I'll be like, oh, I want to buy drugs. And they're like, but actually being medicine, when you say drugs, it looks like you're talking about drugs. And I think that is pretty much my story. I mean, I can't speak on infertility because for me, I've just given everything to God. I know that God is going to settle me last. And I have so much faith in it. There's something that whenever I start to get scared, like, oh, I just remember that God said it. God said it is settled and it is settled. I don't know when, I don't know how long, but I know that it's going to happen. There's no way it's not going to happen. So for me, I'm just really holding on to faith. I'm super thankful that I can live the life that I'm living now without having to go to the hospital every 2 business days. So I think that I will just end this video really just saying that if you have heavy periods, really painful periods, it may be nothing, but it may also be something. So I'll just say, check. This video is not to scare anybody. Some people, they just have pain and that's just it. It's not like there's something wrong with them. But I would just say that if you happen to have any of these things, it's always nice to go to the hospital, find out, do whatever tests you need to do, and just know that, okay, this is not it, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong. I mean, even there's something wrong, but nothing to be worried about at this point. And yeah, pretty much. I remember back then, there was this popular model that had endometriosis. I think Milan, I can't remember, but there was someone. And every now and then I'll just find somebody that has it, and it's not a common condition. No, I wouldn't say it's a common condition. So I mean, if you say 1 in 10 people, but it's not something that people talk about. Growing up, I had never heard, I'd heard of fibroids, but I'd never heard of endometriosis before. And it was after I realized that, oh, I have this thing, and then I started actively Googling to see, following people that had this thing and this thing as well. So I would just say, you can also share this post so that more people can read it, more people can be educated, can be aware about this thing. It is it's better to be safe than to be sorry. So I would, if I had known about this way earlier, I probably would have maybe questioned, is this thing actually normal, or is there something wrong? And maybe I would have gone to do something. But yeah, it's okay. It's fine. No, this is my story, and this is my experience with this condition. At some point I used to say, my endometriosis, but it's not my endometriosis. Why am I personalizing it? It is not my endometriosis. Well, I hope that this video has been informative, educative, and please share, leave me comments if you know someone that has this. If you think that you do, if you want to ask me any questions, just leave me a comment and I will definitely attend to everything. Please like, as always, share, just show me love, and thank you for watching.